During a marriage crisis about a decade ago, I kept focusing on what I meant to communicate while missing the experience my fear was creating around my wife, Lola. Years later, I worked with a wife whose marriage had slowly shifted into what she described as being home buddies. And her husband's attention had become so tied to her sense of security that one new crisis exposed how much of her identity had disappeared into the marriage. What changed the direction of her work was not learning another trick to give attention or to get attention from him. You see, research gives us an important clue. Success always leaves clue. Contrary to popular opinions, which is you have to get lucky, right? In three studies, researchers found that perceived partner responsiveness was associated with greater sexual desire, with the association especially strong among women. Separate research using daily and longitudinal and experimental methods found that self expanding experiences were associated with higher desire and greater relationship satisfaction. Attraction is not simply a beauty context. Um, it's not a contest, and it's not a permanent switch that flips off forever. It is connected to the experience created inside a relationship. Lola and I, we've been together for more than 20 years. In fact, just yesterday we celebrated our 19-year anniversary, and we're now more than 10 years beyond a marriage crisis, serious enough to lead to a divorce petition. So when I tell you that losing attraction inside a marriage does not always begin in the bedroom, I'm not speaking from theory. Today, I want to show you four traps that rejection creates when your husband no longer seems attracted to you. The key word is seems, but that's your reality, that's your story, that's your truth, right? And I want to share with you why trying harder to feel wanted can quietly make the marriage heavier, and what you rebuild on your side when you stop allowing his desire to determine your value. I'm not here to invalidate your need or your desire for desire. I want to show you how to actually get desire, to rekindle desire in a way that's sustainable over a period of time. So we're going to unpack the rejection validation cycle. And of course, it's triggered by rejection. And what happens usually when you don't know what you're doing is you go from rejection into testing. Okay. I'm going to explain what that means. Okay. When you go from testing, you then end up in the need to prove, because what happens when you test, you come up with some ideas, right? You come up with some ideas, but usually the ideas you come up with is not enough. So you feel the need to prove. See here, right? So you go into proving mode. After proving, what happens? Well, you don't need to do too much anymore. But what they usually feel is not desire towards you. What they feel is usually pressure. Okay. So even though that's not your intention, but what you're effectively doing is pressuring. All right. And from pressuring, what usually happens is you experience withdrawal, right? You experience withdrawal, but you don't really necessarily see it as that first. What happens is that your identity collapses. You start to collapse, right? You lose yourself. So let's just put collapse in here, right? All right. So from collapsing because of the withdrawal you're experiencing, you're going to feel it exactly as rejection again, and you continue that cycle. You keep going in that cycle until nature has to break the cycle, which usually means divorce, which means you failed to take control, to take the bulls by the horn, to do the work, right? So that's what we're going to unpack today. My name is Ola. My wife is Lola. We are both co-author of the books Number One Red Flag and Get My Marriage Back. There's two books right here. This one, Number One Red Flag and Get My Marriage Back. You can get them anywhere. Also with the link pinned into the description and the comment section. Before we dive into today's breakdown, if your husband has lost attraction, intimacy is disappearing, and your marriage is actively in a crisis state right now, you cannot afford to wait for this stream to figure out piece by piece. Go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery right now and book a one-on-one discovery session with me so we can map out your exact scenario all the way down to resolving and also improving attraction levels in your relationship and your marriage. Rejection hurts because it does not stay inside the bedroom. Your husband turns away, does not initiate, he gives a little affection or seems emotionally flat, and your mind immediately tries to answer a much bigger question. What does this mean about me and my marriage, right? You internalize it, and that is where the rejection validation cycle begins. So we're going to be unpacking this together real quick. Just give me 5 minutes, all right? So you experience rejection, and then immediately you go into testing mode, right? So trap number 1, turning intimacy into a marriage test. Let's put that on the screen. Let's get going. Turning intimacy into a marriage test. Intimacy into a marriage test. All right. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications so you're notified when we go live. All right, turning intimacy into a marriage test. What are we doing here? There you go. All right, good. So what do I mean by this, right? So you find yourself initiating sex, even though that's not really your thing, but hey, you're doing it because somebody said, hey, sometimes initiate sex, right? So, but recently you've been initiating sex partly because you want connection, right? You want to feel connected to your partner again. Maybe it's been a while, right? But underneath that desire is a second question. You're wondering, right? You're panicking. You in recent times it feels as though it doesn't really want you. You don't feel desired. You don't feel sexy. But maybe more so you don't feel desired because it takes time to get to that other stage, right? So occasionally he still responds, right? So whenever he responds, you feel a temporary relief, right? And then if he does reject you, or he turns away, or he just seems cold, or it feels awkward, and you don't want to be rejected because rejection hurts, right? You've experienced that in the past, and you don't want to feel that way, right? So if he rejects you, then it starts to feel like your marriage is not safe, right? Like you start to wonder, like what? So where else is he spending this energy, right? And now sex is carrying a job that it wasn't meant to carry, because in the end, in the final analysis, sex is something that you do when you feel wanted, when you feel attracted, when you feel in gym, right? Exactly. So now it has become evidence to you, right? In the case where you're constantly trying to solve for your mind, you're now in your head all the time. Every time you're thinking about this, it's more so about you in your head and not necessarily something that you just, there's no magnetic energy. It's just you want to force it because you kind of want it, but you're overthinking the after effects of rejection, because rejection indeed does hurt, right? So it's not just you. Like all people will go through that period, right? And if you feel like you haven't gone through that, you are here for a reason. So let's not argue about that, right? When in my own marriage crisis, right, most of my reactions, right, they were not really about the immediate moment. They're usually not about the immediate moment. It was more so about either obsession over the past. Like, again, I'm trying to avoid a bad feeling from the past, or I'm obsessing over the future, right? It's never really about the immediate moment, right? And unfortunately, I used present interactions I used them as proof whether I'm losing the marriage or not. And what happens when you're operating from that place? You're operating from a place of fear and panic, and you effectively create more energy that drives you more in that direction that the cycle is going. So you're feeding the cycle, right? People often fail to see divorce coming. You know why? Because they overreact from fear, right? So they see danger. Instead of enjoying the moment or trying to collect data or information from the moment, like engage it, like instead of making assumptions, basically they operate from a place of fear. And what that looks like in real time is flight or fight. Like, I'm going to avoid that, or I'm just going to overreact, or from a place of assumptions, right? So what am I trying to tell you? Testing is dangerous, right? Testing is dangerous. Don't turn intimacy into a marriage test. You can use that moment as information, as opportunity to actually build on top of what you already have. But you have to know that you have something already. We're going to get into that. You have to know that you have something already. But if you're doubting that you're good enough, everything from that stage is going to deteriorate. It's going to get worse, right? So now you go into, so when you test, right? When you're testing, you're going to, well, maybe not so obvious. You're going to come up with the wrong results, right? Because at the end of the day, you're reading those results from you, not necessarily the reality of what's going on. What is going on is usually not what is going on in that moment. It's something that started long before the bedroom, and something that you'll probably continue to see the effect long after the bedroom. So it's not just about that bedroom. So you cannot use just the experience in that moment to determine the fate of your marriage. Because when you do that, you know what happens? You become weird, and obviously you lose your power of influence. Obviously you disengage from your power to seduce, ladies. Do you understand what I'm saying? Pay attention, pay attention. So what usually happens is you go from testing into proving. Trap number 2, right? Proving into testing. What happens? Like, he must be wasting all that energy somewhere else. He must be that he's engaging other people. Do you understand? That will be what you come up with, and that's usually you go from proving now. You go from testing into proving. What does that look like? You start demanding desire. Trap number 2. Okay, trying to demand desire. Ladies, this is the same exact thing as a man trying to demand respect, right? This is something that happened at a subconscious level, something that you actually are in control of. Only if you respect time, only if you respect the overall context, right? So trying to demand desire never really works. You know why? So you start fixing yourself, right, for his reaction. You learn that you should maybe improve your appearance, maybe improve how you smell, right? But here's the issue, right? The motive behind why you're doing it. The motive, is it wholesome? Is it purely about getting reaction from him, right? Also, is that really who you are, right? Because if it's not really who you are, if you're just obsessing over the results you've been getting in recent times, what happens is that it backfires. If you're just obsessing over if he notices that you've changed, like you change your hair style, or if you start obsessing over that backfires. Now you become unusually agreeable, even in your, somebody told you, like, maybe just respect him, and that's what. Well, yeah, you should respect your husband, right? But that's usually not what the case. Sometimes the spiciness, that the spicy, the word I'm looking for is the saucy attitude, right? Sometimes that's what attracted your husband, but you're going to lose all of that because you're seeking external validation consistently, even though you're coming up with solutions that is produced outside of actually listening to him. When I say listen to him, does not mean you agree with him. It means you take the time to understand him, to understand where he's coming from, or what is actually going on with him right now. And yes, sometimes that could be as simple as, so tell me what's going on. It could be that simple, but you have to learn how to shut up and just listen and actually take some notes. Taking notes, not necessarily pull out a pen or paper, but taking note, right? And you're not looking for just one piece of, because what happens a lot of time when people are having conversations, quote unquote communication, is that they're listening for a way that they can, hit it back or respond immediately. They're listening to respond as opposed to listening to understand. Understand will have to correlate a lot of pieces of information together, and that the idea of actually listening long enough creates an experience on its own entirely, because somebody now feels heard, they feel seen, they feel like you actually care, right? And of course in that time you're collecting. So now the fear becomes like, okay, he just said something, you need to know, just listen long, right? Whatever you remember that stands out after an extended listening session, that is what you're going to find useful to continue to serve him, to continue to give unto him, because you go into a relationship to give. You don't go there for give and take. Okay, give and take is the end result of giving. You have to give first. So your time, your listening skills comes handy. So even when you do engage, you're engaging from a place of you're the one giving the validation as opposed to getting obsessed over validation. I know we're supposed to be talking about attraction, right? But I'm telling you what creates attraction. Attraction does not fall out of the sky. So what usually happens when people go through the route of testing, and then what happens is that you go into proving mode. You want to prove what? You want to prove that your test is accurate, because again, all of this is being driven by fear and panic because you're obsessing over the worst case scenario. Okay, so you go from testing into proving. All right, that's what happens when you start demanding desire, and it never works. Okay, it only works in the other direction that you're trying to navigate away from. So you become unusually agreeable. Listening is not the same thing as agreeable, right? You're using extreme measures on both sides. The extreme measure on one side is that you're just agreeing to everything it says. The other extreme is that you don't listen at all, right? So, and in none of those work in real life. Okay, your seductive skills happens when you're comfortable in yourself. We're going to talk about that in a second, right? But trying harder, trying to sexually satisfy him, all that kind of stuff is like you're trying to effect the change you're looking for within a box. And human beings, you can't box us up like that. It doesn't work. What happens is that you mess with the whole experience, and that kills attraction. Why? Because you're performing. So performing improvement is short-term by nature, because you're being an actor. It's not really who you are, and that doesn't mean you can't improve. But if you're going to improve, because improving yourself is not the issue here. If you're going to improve, it needs to be rooted in a desire to change some habits. Maybe yes, you don't clean up properly, maybe you don't take care of yourself, maybe that has been an habit. If it's a habit, it's something you have to work on over a period of time, and then it has to become second nature. If you do anything temporary, it actually gets worse, because now you destroy trust. Now you can't be trusted, right? Because you keep going back and forth. You're flaky, right? So the moment his interaction with you or his reaction to you becomes the scoreboard, there is a big problem with that. Okay, but I'm going to explain that a little bit more. Just hold tight, take note. Okay, there's a big problem with that, because the number one reason, I'll give you the first reason, right? It's because he still controls your emotional state, right? It tampers with, it kills confidence, and that's not sexy, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, it doesn't want you to be cutting him short in the middle of his sentences. Yes, generally men don't like that, right? But he still that does not mean that you come off as no confidence, you're timid, you can't speak up. That's not what he wants. Okay, again, it's never the extremes. Lack of confidence is never sexy. Okay, and my own lesson came very brute. It was brutal. Okay, because my intentions were never to appear needy, but that's what happens naturally when you're moving from a place of fear and panic, obsessing over the past, obsessing over the future, and being disconnected from your power of influence in the present, in this moment. So stay with me. Again, practice it right now. Stay with me. So you go from proving to pressuring. If you don't break that cycle, you go from proving to pressuring. Okay, you are asking desire to reassure you. Trap number 3: asking desire to reassure you. Okay, Reassurance. Again, this is tricky because reassurance is a need, right? You need safety, you need certainty, right? You want security, right? But when you find yourself in these places of crisis, you have to take the bulls by the horn, right? You can't just wait for it to happen to you. You have to actually take control from this place. So eventually proving becomes exhausting. Okay, you try to prove that what you came up with in your testing is true, right? He doesn't find you attractive anymore, right? You're trying to do that. So when you're trying to do that, you're still confused, but you're asking him to reassure you. Okay, you need answers to, do you still find me attractive? Yes, of course, but his action does not align with how you feel, right? You want to know if he still wants you, right? But his action does not align, because when it comes to 10 p.m. at night after everybody has gone to bed, he's still going to turn the other way, or he starts snoring right next to you. So you feel, well, okay, that's the end of your world, right? And then you start to wonder, is there someone else? Is there someone else, right? Now, all of this you're wondering, but it does show up as energy. It shows up in your interaction, right? It shows up in interaction. So you wake up the following day after like 2 hours of sleep, wondering what else could it be, right? And then he's moving around, getting ready for work, but you're resentful. You're resentful. You feel frustrated. You feel sexually frustrated. This is a crazy place for a woman to be. So if you're going through that, I feel for you, because I actually, in my assessment over the years, I've been coaching for like more than 8 years now, and professionally for more than 8 years. I've been doing it probably for the whole of my life, unprofessionally. But anyway, that feeling, I have a I my assessment, right? I don't have the exact numbers. Is that the pain is greater on a woman who feels sexually frustrated than a man, because ideally, generally speaking, women are not supposed to experience rejection when it comes to sex. But when they experience it, they never see it coming. They like he used to be all over like a rabbit. But now suddenly he doesn't want. Like, it seems like he's just okay with life moving forward, right? So I know I have an idea of how crazy you feel, especially working with clients over the years. But you can fix it. Okay. Research on sexual motivation also talks about the differences between intimacy oriented sexual motivation from sex driven by avoidance pressures. We're talking about pressure here for a second, right? If pressure has to be involved, any type of pressure, right? If that becomes a motivation, then it's not going to feel fulfilling, okay? Because it doesn't feel like desire. Because what you want at the end of the day is to feel desired, right? So sex pursued to avoid disappointing a partner is associated with poorer satisfaction. There's a common saying out there about dutiful and beautiful sex. The dutiful is the one you do when you just want to take care of your partner. Well, the wanting to take care of a partner should be good enough, okay? Because you like your partner enough. It's friendship, and you know that every 3 days they're looking forward to it, and you say, I'm going to take care of them. That alone is sexy by itself, and that can help, okay? But if you mean dutiful by obligatory, like it's like, oh God, it's that time. If you have to roll your eyes every time that time comes around, then there's a problem. So if that's what he's doing, like he just doesn't want any parts of it, right? If it comes from a place of pressure, then you're not going to get what you're looking for. And that's why pressuring is such a negative thing that will continue to drive this wedge even further. It's once you end up in this zone, what happens is that you're going to feel the withdrawal from him, and it's going to affect how you feel. It's going to affect how you feel about yourself. And that's why I'm telling you, but this happened because you entered the testing and the proving mode in the first place. Once you end up here, this is going to tamper with your sense of identity. It's going to make you feel rejected all over again. And since you didn't do the work on learning how your seductive powers work, you're going to go in that direction again, and it gets worse and worse. Again, you're killing the idea of trust and safety and security, and of course, desire effectively. and that's a problem in its own. All right, so you go from pressuring to collapsing. Trap number 4, you're making his desire your identity. Okay, making his desire your identity. All right, let's see. Making his desire your identity. Okay, this is the deepest trap. Okay, as opposed to is struggle to experience attraction towards you, right? That's a meaning. That's a meaning you've attached to your experience of rejection, right? He's struggling to experience attraction towards you, right? Instead of that, you see it internally as I am unattractive, right? It becomes who you are. That experience becomes who you are. And those are not the same thing. Again, he can experience a difficulty, a struggle with respect to attraction towards you. A lot of English, I understand. Sorry, right? But again, you can make it about the relationship as opposed to making it about your full. One is describing a relational reality, and the other one is basically handing over your identity to another adult, and to basically to entities that you don't control, and that's a problem. That's a problem because then that's when you resort to things like, oh, well, I guess it's just my fate. I guess it's just my luck. Well, I guess I have to go look for answers from additional external sources. And that usually will destroy your relationship even more, will destroy desire and attraction levels even more because you will feel rejected more and more because you are disconnecting from the most important aspect of all of this, which is yourself. Okay. And the larger emergency principle in all of this, right, is that most recommended actions are directed towards you rather than manipulating your spouse's behavior. This is an emergency. This is something you have to learn how to do. Okay. So you go from collapsing all over again, you go back to rejection because now every sexual rejection lands harder, right? Because you've made his desire responsible for restoring your value. Again, desire is temporary, but you've turned that into a permanent, it's become permanent identity for you personally. And what happens? You test harder, you prove harder because you don't know what you're doing. You pressure harder, of course, because I mean, all of that is creating an experience, and your presence becomes increasingly organized around obtaining a response from him. So the symptom you were trying to escape, which is rejection, right, now has even more power over you. So look, what I'm teaching you right now is a universal roadmap. Every marriage has its own unique hidden landmines. If your husband has lost attraction, if that's your experience and you want me to look directly at the specific relationship blocked underneath the sexual rejection, emotional distance, roommate dynamic, getting stuck in the friend zone. Maybe you guys still actually talk, but it's just weird because it's just friends, right? And even worse, you feel like maybe he's dealing with somebody else, right? Maybe there's potential infidelity involved or fear of divorce, your worst nightmare, right? Just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. The link is also in the description, and secure one of the discovery slots available over the next few days. So you're realizing probably for the first time that attraction isn't actually your entire issue, because that's an outcome, right, of how you've been moving, of the recent last 3 to 6 months of your relationship, right? The issue is probably identifying the pattern that's killing attraction itself. It's in some see when people say give and take, like one is what you do, one is the result of a healthy relationship. It's very important to understand these distinctions, right? So if that's what you're doing, you're trying to understand this and you're trying to actually rebuild, rekindle what you used to have, then you do have the power, but you have to know how to use it. So that's exactly what we do teach and help you with. Just go to discovery session, and go to one of those, and then you can book one of those sessions at getmymarriageback.com/discovery, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so let's talk about, I want to give you something to work with today. Okay, maybe you can give me another 5 minutes, right? If you stop using your husband's desire as proof that you're attractive, that you're loved, that you're safe, right? If you stop using those things, right, then what do you build on your side that changes the experience of being you, or creating the experience that is creating this right now? Because at the end of the day, you do have power, but you have to know how to use it. I want to show you the rejection attraction cycle. There you go. I want to give you something to work with today. The rejection attraction cycle. Boom. Yeah. All right, so in real life, this is still triggered by rejection. Okay, this is still right. So the answer to rejection is not getting better at extracting reassurance, which is what leads to testing, to proving, to pressuring, right? So you have this option, like I showed you earlier on, right? You have this option, right? From rejection breeds obsession, and what happens is that you suddenly start to feel the need to test. This is easy, by the way, because it happens naturally. You start testing, right? Proving, right? And then pressuring you. You go that route that basically leads to more rejection, right? Instead of going that direction, I'm going to show you something differently, okay? And we're going to map it to what you're trying to create, which is ultimately what we're trying to create here, guys. What we're trying to create is what we call, let's see here. We're trying to create attraction. Okay, it's an outcome. So there's a process that you have to go through in order to create this outcome. Okay, the problem with going the route of panic, fear driven, easy route of testing, proving, pressurizing, obsession over, is he talking to someone? The problem with that is you're essentially trying to do this. You're trying to do you're trying to create a direct link between here and here. That's a problem. Winners understand this is a problem. Losers always try to do this. I'm not calling you a loser. I'm just talking about losing strategy. Okay. All right. So, but you're not generating the result you're looking for, obviously. So we know that this never works. Okay. There's no such thing as this in real life. Make sense? It doesn't exist in real life. Okay. So what I'm going to show you is first of all, understand, acknowledge, know that in life, if you're anything worthwhile that you're going to get, that is great, that is good, right? That is long lasting, that is sustainable, is going to have to come from a process. It's going to have to come from 3 P's, right? It's going to come from a process. Okay. One of the P's is prayer, but prayer without work is dead. Right, you guys know that, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a second, right? But prayer is a place of it's going to come from 3 P's. Okay, prayer, patience, and process. Okay, prayer, patience, and process. Patience does not mean you're waiting on the other person. It just means you understand that it's a process that consumes a little bit of time. All right, and that's something you leverage in your favor. Okay, so the idea I'm sharing with you is going to gravitate away from the idea of obsessive testing and trying to prove and then creating pressure, and then they withdraw even further away from you, making you experience rejection all over. We're going to try something else. Okay, we're going to go in the direction of grounding. Okay, you cannot force desire out of another adult. You cannot demand desire. You can seduce your partner into desire. You do have that power, ladies, but you have to know how to use it, okay? But first, let's go back to grounding, okay? Time is your friend in this case. time is your friend. Time is no longer your enemy because you're no longer desperate. You're not desperately seeking desire, okay? You are going to cook it. You're going to intentionally cook it because at the end of the day, if the person you're talking about, your husband, is a human being, this works 100% of the time. Grounding. We're going to go towards grounding. Why grounding? Why? What does this has to do with feeling desired? Right? So let's say, for example, you experience rejection. That happens in real life. Whatever. You experience it doesn't mean they rejected you, right? You experienced a feeling of feeling undesired, unattractive. You felt that like a normal human being. That happens in real life, okay? And why? Because he turned away that particular night. He did not initiate, or he hasn't initiated in a while. Actually, you don't fully understand what's going on. He seems emotionally disconnected, right? So instead of overreacting or trying to, prove the worst case scenario, grounding will mean that you stop allowing that moment to define you. Okay, you go back to your source of truth, not truth, whatever you think truth is, which is your experience right now. You go back to your source of truth, right? You return back to gratitude. Okay, so we have 3 core pillars here. We'll call it the GPS, right? And the GPS is grounding, purpose, and self. Okay, I'm going to break them down, right? And how it translates to this, right? But the G also stands for gratitude, also stands for God. And what it means is that you go back to your source, you go back to your higher self, that self that doesn't overreact to momentary feelings of failure, right? You go back to that. It's difficult, okay? It's easier said than done, but it gets easier with time. And also the result you create from that is more long lasting, it's sustainable, and it's more, you feel more fulfillment from it. Everything you get from short term is either instant failure or short term success that will fail, which makes it even worse. Make sense? We're going somewhere. Remember, it's a process. You have to respect process. You respect patience, meaning time, right? And you respect prayer. Okay, so during this period, you're taking your time with yourself. You're enjoying the time with yourself. Okay, now from grounding, right? Again, you're able to engage gratitude, right? You engage your faith. You engage things that make you feel that responsibilities, life responsibility, things that also create greater good in the long term. You're playing the long game here because you no longer want to end up in a place where, hey, he likes you like one night and then the next 3 nights it destroys you even more, destroys your self-esteem even more. You want something that's stable, something that feels safe, something that's sustainable, something that you can always count on because the other person also feel like they trust you, right? It's not about pretending that rejection does not hurt, okay? It's about learning what to do if you ever experience rejection ever again, okay? As opposed to allowing rejection to become your strategist. All right. So I mentioned a client earlier on, and she reached a point where her husband's attention carried way too much responsibility. And what usually, ladies, is what you do. You do the extreme when this happens. You go to the extreme opposite. You might start dancing on the internet to feel good about yourself all over again. And there's nothing wrong with all those things. But again, if you go back and forth, you might start shooting quotes around the subliminal quotes on the internet and stuff like that. You start sharing stuff with him that you teach him how to be a husband. But really what you're trying to generate is desire. You want to feel attractive. You want to feel sexually desired by your husband. So if you can think deeper, think about it. Are you creating more of that, or you're destroying it further because of your emotional reaction in the short term? Something we got to pay attention to. But from grounding, we want to go in the direction of purpose. Let's talk about purpose. Remember, I told you there's 3 core pillars here. There's GPS, right? Grounding, purpose, self. So let's go into grounding. Let's talk about grounding. Let's talk about going from grounding into purpose. Okay. Why purpose, right? So rejection is painful. I think I've reiterated that a few times, right? I'm not trying to remind you. I'm just trying to tell you that it is what it is, right? But it's really about you knowing what to do with pain. If he shuts down, do you know what to do with that? Or you get angrier, you get, naturally, as a normal human being means you're majority, failure, it means loser, right? I hate to say it that way, but that's the reality, right? But people that are winners, they understand that there's more to life than just what they feel, right? So you experience that pain, you know what to do with it, right? So this is actually pain-driven purpose, right? So when I say purpose, you can't really have purpose in this respect unless you've experienced pain. It's pain-driven purpose, meaning you've seen the other side, you've experienced the other side, you've gone tried to do the testing route, you've done the proving route, right? You've done everything that panic and fear tells you to do, and you're noticing that it failed. So you're learning this for the first time. Purpose means you engage your life mission and your purpose. Remember what I told you about patience. Okay, prayer, patience, process. You understand? Prayer, patience. PPP, 3Ps is something you can remember. The 3Ps, let me put that here. You understand this, the power of these three things, right? So why? Because you have to navigate this new route, the rejection attraction cycle. You're trying to cook attraction, right? So you understand that nature does not like vacuum. So, and the I do mind is the devil's playground, right? So if you're just moving through this and you're just telling yourself, I know myself, I know myself, I know myself, you're probably going to fail because you're still a normal human being like us. So what do? We engage a fourth P and a fifth P, purpose and pain, right? Pain driven purpose, meaning you engage your life mission and your purpose so that you're busy, okay? Not just busy for the sake of busy. You're now trying to work on your impact, your legacy in this life. If you're readily available, I'm not surprised that your husband is taking you for granted because you're just there anytime and it's just boring, okay? So again, the 3Ps. The purpose means you're moving with a life of purpose now. Your career, what happened to your career? What happened to that next level of promotion you're trying to get to? Something that will engage you and give time away from the usual panic-driven, fear-driven reactions or methods or measures that you're trying to use to rebuild attraction and it's not working. You know what they say, well, distance makes the heart fonder. This is when it starts to take effect because now, they don't see you around as often. You're not begging, you're not clingy, you're not needy. Not just because you're faking it, you're actually busy. Do you understand? Because you can't fake this. If you fake this, it will backfire. Good morning, Uncle Beno. I see you, my brother. Good to see you. All right. Because you're faking, they can tell, they can feel it. Okay. So this is the part of the deeper diagnostic work that we did with that client, right? Because she started to recognize how much of her identity had eroded after that major life transition. Okay. So a lot of things are going to happen in life. Things are going to happen. It might be childbirth, it might be travel, it might be travel across the overseas so that you can make a better life for yourself. Things are going to happen, or somebody died, or so things are going to happen in life. And oftentimes, even if you feel a sense of rejection, it's not always about you, but you make it about yourself. Remember, because identity, the feeling of rejection hurts, right? You make it about yourself when you're moving with panic and fear, because rejection does hurt. Okay, and it creates obsession, it breeds obsession. Okay, so when we work with clients, we it's not just about, oh, we preach to you and tell you just do this. No. Listen, you're going to be a normal human being, either you like it or not. Okay, like I said, nature does not like vacuum, so you better have some meaningful, more fulfilling things to fill those gaps, because the I do mind is the devil's playground. When you do this, when you engage grounding and you go from grounding to purpose, what happens is you start discovering more about yourself. So now you have a frame of reference from that place of rejection or going that route. You're now having a different experience. You're learning more about yourself. In fact, the pain that you went through, that experience is the reason why you're learning how you react. You're having a context to it. Like, this is how I reacted when I found myself in it. I had never experienced rejection ever in my life. I had that experience personally. No one. Like, I get what I want, right? And the first time I experienced rejection from my wife, It was a shock. Okay, it was a shock, and I'm sure you experienced the same thing too. So now you know what that feels like, but now you're learning that, hey, that was just a feeling. It's not necessarily who you are. It's not necessarily the full reality. It's just the reality you experience. It became your truth, but you have to go back to your source of truth. So from purpose, you're now creating what we call self-discovery. Self-discovery. All right, self-discovery is key in all of this, okay? Because the only source of sustainability, because whatever it is that you build from this point on forward has to be sustainable. Okay, self-discovery. It has to be sustainable, okay? Because if you do back and forth too much in a negative cycle, such as rejection validation cycle, if you do too much of that, right, you kill distraction. You kill attraction further, right? And then it's harder to rebuild it because you need trust in all of this. They have to be able to trust you, right? You have to be able to trust yourself, more importantly, right? But when you start discovering yourself, it means you're able to create value. When I say value, I'm not talking about moral values, because I have a feeling that you already think you know that you're a good person, okay? And it has nothing to do with that. I hate to burst your bubbles, but it has nothing to do with moral values. I'm talking about not just value, including morals and everything else, but the value that other people can experience around you. Naturally, they can experience this value. Okay. You experience it first, because confidence is everything, right? You can't do any of this until you build confidence. But you're able to build confidence as part of self discovery, because now you know what you're capable of. Make sense? Now you know what you're capable of. That means you can always come back this same route. And now you're generating value, not just value. Hold on one second. Let me make sure that we're good. What is this? Okay. All right. Just making sure that I'm still live. Okay. All right, good. So you're generating value. There you go. Generating value. All right. So remember, we're still trying to drive at, when you generate value and they can see it, it's not always immediately obvious, right? They just know something has changed, right? Now you know what you're up to. In fact, you've disconnected from the idea of rejection. You're busy working on yourself, building yourself, right? But you know what happens on the other end? Because that person is still a part of your life. You have responsibilities together. Sometimes you have children together. Sometimes you have businesses that you do together. But you're no longer just readily available, especially being clingy and needy and testing and proving and creating pressure. You're no longer doing those things, right? Right? So they get curious because they start to wonder what you're up to, right? And that's effectively attraction that came back. Boom. Right? It was a process. Okay? It was a process. My artistic thing is not working right now, but there you go. It was a process. It's a process that you had to come through, right? Right. So now curiosity, attraction is now a reality, right? And then you now get to choose if you still want this person sexually or not, because now you're getting their attention, right? Because it's showing confidence, it's showing self-esteem, it's showing that you've been caring for yourself. When you care for yourself, everybody else wants to take care of you. That's the way it works. If you don't take care of yourself, other people will look at you as a leech. You come off as clingy and needy and a failure, right? That's how life works. And I'm sure that you expected a little bit different. They should give you some grace. But let me tell you something. At the end of the day, all of us are trying to survive, even if it's emotionally. Okay? So you got to be able to survive on your own. When you no longer need them anymore, suddenly they need you. Suddenly the anxiety will change space, right? So can rejection still happen? Yes, because this is real life, right? But now you know exactly what to do if rejection ever happens again. And the more you go from rejection, instead of going towards the easy route of testing, you go to grounding. The more you build trust, the more you build safety, the more you build security. First for yourself, which means you no longer need them, but then they naturally want a piece of that. They want to be a part of that party. They want to take care of you suddenly because you no longer need them. This is easier said than done. And this also needs to translate to your unique story, because everybody's story is different, but the principles are the same. It's scientific underneath. Do you understand what I'm saying? So now you're able to go from rejection to, the more you can go through this cycle, the more naturally it becomes second nature, and you no longer have to do the back and forth, and then it looks like you're lucky because you did the work. Make sense? All right. So that's what we're dealing with. If you want to build sexual desire again, this is the route you have to take. Now, before we wrap up, let me leave you with this, right? If during today's lesson you found yourself thinking that I'm describing your situation at this point in time, yes, I am. Okay? I am describing your exact situation. Okay? Don't go back to guessing. Okay? Knowing the rejection validation cycle and navigating rejection attraction cycle, they are easier said than done. For an average person, it's a skill set that you have to learn. You have to change bad habits, okay? And you need support through that process, because again, you're most likely always going to revert back to your old self if you don't have support system, if you don't have a system, if you don't have a mindset framework that you're working with. And if you have those things, it goes a long way in creating the success you're looking for. So every marriage is different. Every story is different. Every relationship has their own story and blind spots and personalities. Your husband's loss of attraction can sit on top of years of resentment, emotional distance, childhood trauma, pressure, complacency, conflict, another relationship. I don't know, possibly, right? Maybe somebody else is involved, but that would be a worst case scenario, right? Sometimes that's just you making that assumptions. And if it was that clear, you probably wouldn't be on this video. It might be sexual disconnection, right? It can be patterns that are completely unique to your marriage. There can be stuff that are temporary that eventually becomes permanent, and we don't want to wait until it becomes permanent. And that's why I offer a private 1-hour discovery session. And what happens is that we'll spend 1 hour looking at your specific situation, identify what's actually happening in your relationship, and helping you gain clarity on the next best step. So if you're ready for that, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. That's getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Link is also in the description and pinned to the comment section. Now, your husband's lack of desire is a symptom. It's a relationship symptom. It's not a final verdict. It's not a final verdict of your value, your worth. Improving yourself, yes, is healthy. Performing for his approval keeps your power outside of you. That becomes a problem. Wanting sexual connection is normal. Using sex to test whether your marriage is safe turns intimacy into pressure. Rebuilding attraction does not mean manipulating him into reacting differently. Okay, it means rebuilding the quality, the depth, purpose, and emotional stability that you control, improving your seduction skills effectively. Okay, so it's not the same thing as manipulation, not in the human experience. Some people will try to oversimplify English because of their pasha behavior, will attempt that. Okay, but they are two different things. Okay, the idea is learning that you do have influence and learning how to use that power in a way that actually serves the relationship, both short and long term. And rejection returning does not erase your progress. It just means you're living life, and it means an opportunity to improve your skills. It reveals whether you can remain grounded without surrendering your identity to the next response. So if this helped you understand what to do when your husband no longer seems attracted to you, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications so you're notified when we go live. And if you're looking for me, you know where to find me. Just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Hopefully you've been enlightened, educated. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Are you fighting to save a marriage or a relationship, or simply avoiding to end up in a broken or toxic one?
We've been there, and you're in the right place. You see, inside this book, right, you will find and you will discover the secret to save a broken marriage, and you will learn how to build and attract the marriage of your dream.